Fast fact. The average allowance given by parents to children is $10 per week. If kids saved just 1 week's allowance each month, they'd have saved over $1,800 by their 15th birthday. I'm Drew Thomas, and you're listening to Bank Chats. So welcome to the latest episode of Bank Chats, and we appreciate you actually intending to listen, because you can't just kind of stumble upon us. It's you kind of got to find us and actually hit play on the episode. So thanks for those of you that are either a first-time listener or maybe viewer. We're experimenting with video now, so you may be catching us on video. Some episodes are video, some are not. It depends on when it was recorded, but we're doing our best. I am, of course, Drew Thomas, your host, and with me is my co-host, my producer, a man with the skills of a superhero who also happens to be a librarian, Jeff Matap.
Wow, thanks, Drew.
So we're talking, what are we talking? We're talking savings today, right?
Savings today, yeah.
Yeah. So savings, I'm going to throw just a couple of things out here real quick. So more than 1 in 4 Americans have savings below $1,000. So 28% of Americans as of last year have savings less than $1,000.
Okay.
The crazy thing about that is that the average rent price in the United States and mortgage price in the United States is like $1,300 a month.
Yeah, well, paycheck to paycheck then, yeah.
Yeah. So you got to figure there's 28% of Americans couldn't make a rent payment or a mortgage payment just on their savings if something happened.
Wow.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And April happens to also be a big time for saving in banking world. So during the month of April, we have America Saves Week, which is usually the second. I think it's either the second week of April or the first full week of April. I don't know which one it is, but it happens in 2025. It happens to be April 7th through the 11th. So that was just a couple weeks ago, based on when this is coming out. And 2 days from now, on the date that this episode drops, is Teach Children to Save Day, which happens every fourth Thursday of every April every year. And that's handled by the American Bankers Association, right?
Yeah. And
so
April in general, that's financial literacy month. So yeah, lots of financial.
Yeah. So lots of financial stuff. So with us to talk financial stuff, we have two fantastic guests with us. One of them is a recurring guest. The other is not. So we're going to go ahead and hear. This is Randy McLaughlin. Randy is our Vice President and Retail Sales Officer, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And you've been tell us a little bit about yourself and where you've been, how long you've been in banking.
Banking, I've been here at AmeriServ for 15 years now. Time flies.
Nice.
I started my career up in Northern Cambria as a branch manager. And then around 2012, I migrated down back to Richland, my roots, and I've been working out of the University Heights office there from 2012, I don't know, for 3 or 4 years. And then I ended up in retail. So now I'm a retail sales officer.
Nice.
And,
cool. Nice. So, I mean, we'll get back to it, but let me also introduce our second guest. So with us also is a returning guest, is Senior Vice President of Retail Banking, Kerri Mueller. Hi.
Hi.
How have you been?
Good. Real good.
I see you almost every day. But
yes, you do.
But our listeners and viewers have never seen you and haven't heard you for a while.
No.
Yeah.
It's good to be back, and it's good to talk and have another podcast on something that we feel is very important.
Yeah. Yeah. So start. I'll let you start. So let's talk a little bit about saving, and we're primarily focused, I think, on talking about teaching kids to save here. I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure we'll talk about some adults stuff and so forth in here too. But when is the best time to start teaching your kids how to save money?
Well, I think, Drew, we are excited to be here, obviously, because as you mentioned, it is National Teach Children to Save Day coming up. And we believe strongly in financial literacy at all ages. And it's important at a young age to start your child out with good money habits, especially savings. And with an early start to savings and understanding and budgeting, I think children can build life skills really as they head into adulthood. And the earlier we can teach the children about the value of money, the better. And I think as soon as a child begins to understand numbers, they begin to understand the basic concepts, really, saving. So, you were quoting some statistics, and some statistics that I had found where by the age of 3, they actually are beginning to grasp money habits. And really by the age of 7, um, they're seeing their parents and how they really deal with their money, whether they're on a budget and so forth. And they're pretty much already set. So, they're not just in stone yet. So there is room for improvement. And I think that that's why it's so important to start young.
Yeah. I mean, I remember whenever I was a kid, I remember like it being in like elementary school and you had like the coin. Did you have the coins, like the little paper or plastic coins that you used to play with and stuff like?
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of just basically understanding the concept of, how to handle money and things like that, even in like maybe first, second grade, something like that. Right.
We probably all had piggy banks, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did.
So,
Yeah. So you had mentioned that, kids start picking up on what, their parents' saving habits. What's something that a parent can incorporate in their daily life with savings that would benefit a kid, but also continue their savings? So,
Absolutely. And I think as simple as it may sound, kids need to have their own money and they need to have a place to store it, just as we were talking, before they can understand how to make decisions about it. And starting with a piggy bank as they age and set them up with even a savings account, explaining to them to what a bank is probably one of the biggest and most important step. I think whether they get an allowance, whether they do chores around the house, walking the neighbor's dog, they get a check for a birthday, encourage them to put the money, in a safe spot, whether that be a piggy bank or a regular bank, to keep their money safe and allow that savings to add up and then track their spending.
are there concepts or techniques that are better suited for different age groups? Like you had mentioned an allowance. I'm assuming that, that would be for a little older child, but, are there different concepts like the piggy bank that you can start early that would make more sense for specific age?
And I do. And I think the younger you are, I think that the piggy bank is probably an important concept for them to learn and to put, to save that money, especially with birthdays and different things like that. And then the older that they get, whenever they start to get a job and so forth and so on, they'll have already developed those habits where they can follow through with.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I guess it is one of those things. I know whenever I was, I think you learn a lot when you're young. Your brain is a sponge when you're younger. So the younger you can kind of start these kinds of concepts, they sort of become a part of who you are instead of something you're trying to learn as an adult. Right. So, I mean, if you can start that concept of saving up for what you want instead of maybe using a credit card or taking out a loan. I mean, sometimes you can't, like most people cannot buy a house without getting a loan, or even a car these days. I mean, some cars cost more than my parents' first house did,
Soon to go up.
Yeah, and soon to go up, right? But there are definitely times where we tend to lean on credit cards and things to get what we want, when in reality it might be better to just try to save up for them ahead of time.
And I think that's an important concept. I think, saving up for what you need, especially for emergencies. And as you mentioned at the beginning, there's the percentage of people that have savings accounts with less than $1,000 in them is very rare. And I think that really the concept that we always teach when we go out to schools and we go out to even adult financial literacy courses is that they really need to have double the income, double their monthly income in their savings account, because emergencies always happen, whether you need new tires for your car or your water furnace goes out or, something of the like is going to happen. And it's good to have that savings rather than, rack the credit
Oh, sure.
up on your cars.
Yeah. So let me ask Randy, because you have kids.
I do.
Right.
I have two.
So how did you sort of start out whenever they were younger? Because if you've been banking a long time, you would think that you probably started trying to teach them at a young age, right?
I did. I, being in banking and prior to that, I was a mortgage broker, but I did have that concept of saving, and I did try to pass it down onto them. And We used to make a little bit, I don't know if you call it a game, but, you had those certain points in your life, your birthday, your Christmas, your communion, where they would get a lump sum of money. And we would make it as a family event. We would go up to the bank, and back in the day, you had the passbook. You had your little, and you went into the dresser, you got your passbook out. We're going to go to the bank. And we made it a little bit of a episode.
An
in
event.
it.
Yeah.
So, and we would just, and of course, I had to try to teach them that it's going in, well, why are they taking my money? I'm like, well, they're going to hold it for you. And they're not really taking it. They're holding it.
Still yours.
They said, "Okay." And then I said, if you ever want, we can pull the book out and we'll take a look and see your money's still there in that. So that was the very first that I can remember as raising two daughters, that we got into, thinking about savings and unexpected expenses and that. Of course, then you had to teach them, that at that point in time, it was not so much a want, but it was a need. We're planning for down the road. Anything that you want right now, we'll take that maybe out of the family budget. That's that need. We're looking long term here. Let's put this money away. Let's look at maybe college. Let's maybe look at your first car purchase. Maybe, cover some down payment, closing costs on a house. This is long term savings. But yeah, that we would do that and we would talk about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it took a while. I mean, and there's a lot of pressure on parents, because savings isn't, born with them. That's a learned trait. It's sort of out of the ordinary. So
Yeah.
it really relies on the parents to say, hey, this is important. Trust me, I've been there.
Yeah.
It's important to have a savings.
Well, and you got to wonder sometimes, like, if it's true that 28% of Americans don't have more than $1,000 in savings, it's hard to teach what you're not doing. Like, it's hard to, sort of say like, oh, do as I say, but not as I do. Right. Like,
Do they get taught the wants and needs, at an early age? They blow their money on what their wants are, and that as a kid, everything's a want. So that's a good concept.
That new bike. I want that. Yeah. Well, do you need it or do you want it?
Right.
So what did you have a daughter? What did you do with Alexis?
And that was pretty much I followed the same route. I mean, obviously, she was a cheerleader, and along with that comes a lot of different costs.
Yeah, been her.
Yes. And I think, helping her identify a savings goal is a great way to get them excited about savings. So when she was like, we would go to Disney every single year for competitions, and there were things obviously that she wanted to do in Disney, and it was a huge cost to me. Just to be able for the flights and for the hotel and things. And so I basically told her that, we needed to open up a savings account, and whatever money that you get. And by that time, obviously she was, getting money for her birthday and different things like that. And so by setting a goal, I think helped because it gives them something to strive for.
Sure.
It's not just something that's just, okay, well, I'm putting my money away, but I want it. Well, like, if they want it bad enough, they're going to keep that money in the bank and then keep it in the savings account.
So I want to touch this because Randy sort of started talking about that, and you just said it too. So let's talk. How do you teach them what a bank is? What is? I mean, I think you kind of said you want to kind of go over like, what is a bank? What is it for? Is that really like something you try to teach pretty young?
Yes, I mean, I do think it is. I don't think like children understand what a bank is. It was just like Randy said, his kids, like when someone goes and puts money and you're giving it to another person, people think, well, wait, that's my money. Like, I'm not giving it away.
Yeah.
But a bank is a business, obviously, that accepts deposits. But, one of the biggest things is that your money is safe in a bank. The savings account allows you to store your money in a safe place. It's insured. So if you're saving up for a specific item, whether it's a bike or whether it's a trip, like I was just talking about, I think it's a good place to store money and just, making those trips and taking them to the bank with you.
That's a good
big
point.
learning lesson.
Yeah. I think that's a very good point. I mean, I remember going to the bank with my grandmother. I mean, that was sort of like in the summers whenever I was out of school and hanging out with grandma and grandpa. Like my grandmother would take me, and we'd go to the store, and then we'd stop at the bank, and then the bank would like, oh, here, have a lollipop or whatever it was, It was like, and so I think that's definitely something that when when you sort of give people or give kids the idea that going to the bank is kind of fun as opposed to a chore,
Right.
then maybe they're more willing to try to come. Do you, what does AmeriServ do we give that kind of stuff out? Like, do we do like?
We do. I mean, Randy's going to talk a little bit later on about what we do have to offer. But, when kids come in, we, like I said, our bank really truly believes in financial literacy. And so whenever they come into our branches, they do get lollipops as well as
Yeah.
dogs and the pets.
Little dog treats.
Oh yeah, well, that's a big deal. Yeah, oh yeah.
But
Yeah, I think the stickers are a big thing now. They see this.
yeah,
They associate stickers with AmeriServ now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But they'll sit there and hey, Mom, can you ask for a sticker?
Oh,
Yeah.
my wife's a teacher, and that's a big thing in schools now. Yep, you got a sticker, and you're special.
And then every Friday you can come in and get popcorn, so they know that
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
we need to go to the bank today, right?
Yep.
They have popcorn. So yeah. So I do think, that, but it's like I said, it's important for that parent to explain to their child as well. We're making trips to the bank, and sharing with them, what they're doing and what their budget is, and just kind of giving them some simple lessons at first. I think would really help them.
Yeah.
And then as they progress, I think it's important that we talk about the safety, as they grow their savings and that you don't want to leave it in a dresser or whatever. I said the safety, of a bank, and we'll talk later, but there's interest that comes into play. Now, I'm talking a little bit later in life. Sure. But there are, you have the safety in the bank, you have interest that the bank will pay. There's a lot of good concepts as to why you want to put that money in the bank as opposed to leave it in your mattress or in the dresser.
Yeah.
So we've mentioned savings accounts, and you just mentioned interest, so a different account. Is a saving account the best vehicle to start a kid out with, or is there other accounts that would work just as well or better?
I would say a savings account is the best because initially you want to keep it simple. You don't want to overcomplicate it because you turn kids off real quick if they don't grasp the concept.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So the savings account, it does, it puts it in a safe place. It's FDIC insured. I mean, you're gaining interest on it. All the principles of savings are there. So I think a savings account. Now, obviously, as that savings account grows and it becomes a larger balance, there are other options. But I think as far as kids go, get them starting the concept of savings, I think the savings account's the best way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to probably agree with you because, I mean, the average savings account, unfortunately, across the United States, I went and looked it up. Like Bankrate says that they do this every week, and they look at like a standard savings account, what the interest rate is. It was like 0.59%, like a 0.5%. So it's not that great, but I think for kids, that's all. They're not so much worried about compound interest and all that happy stuff. They just want to know that their money's safe and that it gets them into the habit of maybe going to the bank and understanding the concept of putting money in, taking money out, with savings accounts now, I know the old rule was you could only withdraw so many times, but I think that's changed a little bit, right?
It has changed a little bit, but as I was going to say, it's not as easily accessible to the kids, right? So they can't go break open their piggy bank and if they're saving up for a specific toy or whatnot versus going to the movies with their friends, right?
Yeah, right.
Like they need to make a decision and they need to go to the bank. They can't just break open that piggy bank and get the money. So I think it's the accessibility of it as well that's important for them to grasp.
Did you ever have to actually break a piggy bank?
I did.
Did you?
I actually did. Yes, yeah, I do. I remember that. I remember that.
That was traumatic for me. I think the first it was like oh man, but in a way that was kind of like a savings account. Like it was like I don't want to break this.
Right.
I like having it, but if I break this thing, it's destroyed forever. So now so you kind of had to think through whether you want to.
Now they're all plastic, so you don't even break them, probably.
You don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
I can remember growing up in Gaystown and I had a piggy bank, and of course you could walk down to the 5 and dime at the time. And I used to sit there real quiet and try to shake my they get the money out so my mom wouldn't hear. See, that's not what that's for. That's not for you to grab that quarter and run down and buy the petty candy.
Yep.
Like, Mom, I want. Yeah, do you want?
That's that want. Yeah, want needs. Yeah.
I got to try to look and see if I still have it. I might have it in my stuff at home, like in a box or something. But when I was a kid, I had this little black. It was a little black cash register, is what it looked like. Okay. And you could put money in, and then you'd you'd pull the thing down, and it would drop the money in, and the little drawer it would lock, and it wouldn't unlock until you hit $10.
Oh, that's
And so it was like, so you had to have to put stuff in it, but then once you hit $10, the little drawer would open and you could get the $10 out.
huh.
And it was kind of neat. I don't know if I still have it or not, but that was kind of a neat
That
sort
is
of
neat.
thing. And
Concept,
yeah. So, I think we started saying like, about teaching kids, taking them to the bank with you. Like, you were saying, I think Jeff said, you said something about kids mimicking parent behavior, right?
Yeah.
So like, how do you, do you think that maybe teaching your kids to save, especially if you're not the type of person that typically saves, if you have kids and you're trying to teach them, does that then help the parents too? Like, because you're kind of like, well, I want to give my kids a good example, so maybe now I start saving more
Well,
than I used to. Or
Back it up a little bit further. If you are a parent that maybe is not as financially literate, you don't know how to save. Well, where can you find information to teach yourself before you teach your children how to save?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that we have a lot of different resources out there for adult literacy as well. And it's rather ironic because as many financial literacy courses as I've done and as I've taught, it's been with both adults and with children, and adults are just as much in need of that knowledge as well as kids are. And I do agree that kids mimic their parents' behavior. And if their parents aren't saving and, let's just say that they're able to go out and do and buy whatever they want, not need, but whatever they want, that in turn pretty much teaches that child that,
Yeah.
they can go out and they can pretty much spend their money on whatever it is. And the savings goal kind of goes out the window. So it's important, I think, to start early with a budget, to teach them about what a budget is, and then, to also obviously teach them about the savings.
Yeah.
I think a budget is it's a key point right there, because your savings is what you have left at the end of the month. You have your cash flow, you have your money coming in, you pay your bills and so on, and your discretionary income. So that's where you're going to get your savings. So you got to have a budget, and you got to get your bills paid, and then you can kind of go from like, this is my money to entertain, but this is my money to save. I think the budget that Kerri mentioned is very important.
So would you say that really, I've heard this before, and I think Kerri and I talked about this the one time we were talking about different savings on the last time that she was here. Pay yourself, like act like you're a bill, right? Like just like the electric bill has to get paid, the water bill has to get paid, the mortgage has to get paid. You have to pay yourself at least something, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah. I think that's probably an important concept, I think, for people to try to get their head around, that you're just as important. I mean, okay, I guess ultimately, if the difference is, well, I need to eat or I need to put money into my savings, you kind of got to eat.
Right.
But
You'll live a happy life and,
yeah,
enjoy it,
but I think you have to also consider yourself as important as any other bill. Like to have that savings set aside, even if it's just enough to get you through a month or two, could make a real big difference for yourself.
There's no doubt. I mean, there's always unexpected expenses,
Sure.
and you need to have that, that safety net, that nest egg you can reach into. I mean, it's a lot better to grab out of a savings account if you can avoid putting it on the credit card. I mean, that's
Yeah.
and that's usually comes down to what seems like a lot of the options are.
So let's talk budgeting a little bit, right? Because we touched on that before, but I think it's an important concept. So, Kerri, do you want to like kind of go through some budgeting tips, things like that, either for kids or for adults, whatever you wanted to do?
Sure. I mean, I think it goes back to defining the needs and the wants. The need is something that you cannot live without. A want is something that you'd like to have, but you can live without it. And I think that, that budget that you set is going to help you decide whether you can afford to spend your money and whether it be on that need or that want, and determine how much money you have at the end, as Randy said, discretionary income after everything has been paid. But it's a matter of sitting down, and whether it's just on a blank piece of paper. And I say all the time that, people try and make budgeting very. They think they have to have like this program or some type of
Something complicated. Yeah.
exactly where honestly, mine is a simple binder, and my bills are written in my binder every month, and I know what my bills are every month, and every month I sit down, I put my bills in there, and then I pay my bills 2 times a month, and I know what my budget is, and so it works for me. It's simple, and I think that starting, like I said, and Alex would even sit down with me at the time that I started to pay some of those bills to see exactly how it was that I did it.
Yeah.
Even like writing a check and just giving her those simple lessons on banking and just really how to deal with money in general, I think is a good start.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree that I think that there are, well, you said about paying bills. I mean, and wants and needs. I mean, I think that a lot of us have things that we want and we consider them a need, and then we use a credit card or we take a loan or we do something else. And you end up paying a lot more ultimately with interest and things like that, doing it that way, as opposed to saving up for something and buying it. And I guess I'm probably just as guilty as anybody else of doing that.
Yeah.
But to me, there's something about saving up for something and buying it and then realizing that it's mine free and clear.
Yeah.
Like I'm not enjoying it, and then I get a bill a month later and and I got like, this is mine, and it's so
It is much more satisfying to pay for something in cash.
I'm a cash guy. Yeah.
It is. I mean, obviously, we all know that when we use our credit cards, we're normally paying like twice as much for the item
yeah.
than what it really did cost.
It reminds me like of a little story that I'm going through right now. I have a daughter, and she's looking to buy her first house in the coming weeks, and for the last 25 years of her life, she lived at home.
Mhm.
And I'm like, Hannah, I said, your budget. We talked about budget. Yeah, we talked about budget, Dad. I said, it's about to change. What do you mean? I said, I'm like, things are going to be a little different.
Yeah.
Mom and Dad didn't charge you. You didn't have a mortgage payment. You didn't have rent. You didn't have utilities. You didn't have any of these expenses that are kind of important in your budget. And I said, now you're going to move out. You're going to get this house. And I said, you got to pay the mortgage. You got to pay the utilities. Well, what are you trying to say, Dad? Maybe Amazon's not going to come to the door every week. Got to make a few changes here. She goes, I know what you mean. And she is. She's a very good kid. She realizes it. It's an exciting part of her life. But, as we talk about budgets, I sit down and I say, look, as life events come, you buy a house, you get married, you have kids, budget's got to change. And you got to be willing to adapt. You got to make some changes.
But while she was living at home, she was banking her money because Dad taught her how to save at a young age.
Yeah, some. Yeah. I think we could all say back, maybe, if I had the knowledge back then that I have now, I could have done it a little bit better. But she's definitely, has done a good job of saving and putting money back. And then now she has the money for a down payment for closing costs and that. But
Sure.
Yeah.
then a lot of that money's going to go out. And I says, and you're going to have to work to build it back up again. And that's the hard part. Yeah. And I'm hoping as a parent that I instilled those stuff in her, but you do what you can. And then, they go out and you hope that now, as we're talking here, that you taught them at a very young age, the importance of savings.
Mhm.
And then, they can carry that on for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even buying a house, whenever I bought even when I moved out of my parents' house for the first time into an apartment, you don't realize the things you need to buy,
That's right.
and you think to yourself, oh, I'm going to buy a new TV and I'm going to buy this and I'm going to buy that. And then you realize, well, I don't own a plunger. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, these are the kinds of things that you just got to wonder about. Like, like I need silverware. I need
Yeah.
plates. I don't want, you can't always just buy what you want.
And then going from your apartment to your house, you need a lawnmower now, it's changing, it's evolving. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What you got, Jeff? You got something?
Yeah, I got one more. So we had talked about taking your kids to the bank and that can be a fun thing. Are there any other fun ways to teach kids to save, other than a piggy bank, getting to eventually smash it, or taking your kid to the bank and getting a lollipop.
I was traumatized, but I didn't get to smash it.
Maybe that's not so fun.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, no. Or going to the bank and getting your lollipop, or any other ways that you can teach a kid to save that is more fun than just, hey, taking your money to the bank and not seeing it for a year,
Right. And I think that there are, and I think that, parents can be creative in how they teach their kids about savings. And one of the things that I had said and I had mentioned earlier was to set a goal. So if they want a bike, for instance, having them realize that they need to save money in order to get that bike. I mean, all they can think about is that bike. Like, I need that bike before summer, or they want to go to camp for the summer. But having some sort of goal that they are shooting for, I think makes it a little bit more exciting for them.
Yeah.
Rather than just, stashing money
nothing.
away.
Yeah.
And saving for nothing. I think, having something in mind that is really, truly a want for them, I think really makes them excited about putting that money away.
Yeah.
Is there like is there something to maybe the idea of sort of like matching like what they do?
Oh, my
Like,
parents know that.
it kind of teaches the concept like in the employer's world, like you get, well, if I put 2% in my 401k, my employer will put 2%.
That's a good
in my
point. Yeah.
401k. Like, so, maybe, as a parent, like you can maybe instill that idea of like, okay, well, for every $5 you put in, I'll put in 2 or something like that. I mean, does that work? Is that a valid idea?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great incentive. And in fact, I used to do that. I mean, that gives the child a little bit more encouragement to put that money away. And, it gets into a little bit more. And, Randy was going to talk a little bit about, the small interest that you're earning right now on savings accounts. But
Yeah, the concept of compounding interest is important. I mean, you're correct as young kids in that they're not going to look so much as how their money grows.
Mm-hmm.
But as you get older and those balances increase, the compounding interest is important. And what we mean by compounding interest is the simple example is you put $100 in it. Well, 30 days later, that $100, you look at your balance and it's 105. Well, what happened? The bank paid you some interest. Now we're looking at the next 30-day period. What's the bank going to pay interest on? Not 100 that you put in initially. It's going to pay on 105 that your account's grown to. So that compounding interest, and maybe that's not something we teach kids at a very young age, but at some point in time, that is a very important tool of savings. And that's why you do it at a bank, because you earn that interest, you earn the compounding interest, your money grows, and then it helps with your savings account.
Shows the importance of leaving your money in a savings account to watch that compound interest. You can't just take that interest out and spend it, and then you're back down to where you were at.
Yeah, it defeats the purpose
Right.
of having long-term growth.
Right.
So, and that's another thing, it's hard with kids because you're kind of right. You take the money to the bank, and in their mind, it kind of disappears.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to teach them to say, yeah, it's still there. It's growing. It'll be there for you. But we're looking to save for the long term. We're looking for save for down the road.
Mm.
There has to also be a difficult concept, I think, sometimes for kids is that, when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, a year is 1/7 of your life, right? I mean, waiting for Christmas is from Thanksgiving to Christmas is an eternity. So when you ask your kids like, hey, we're going to go and take your money and put it into the bank and it's going to earn interest and it's a long-term savings. And then they look at you a week later and say, so did my money earn interest yet? Like that's got to be a sort of a sobering thing for them to have to try to wrap their brains around, I think sometimes too. But yeah, it's that concept of, you got to give it time. You got to have some patience, maybe a little bit too with certain things.
absolutely.
I can remember when my daughter got her first paycheck when she went to work, and she come home and she says, "Dad, you can't believe what happened to my paycheck." I'm like, "Where are you going with this?" She says, "I made this, but I'm only bringing home this." And then I look at your bank, and what your bank pays me in interest doesn't equal what I'm paying in taxes. I said, "Welcome to the rule, buddy."
Who is FICO and why does he get all my money?
Right.
You know. What other things did you want to maybe bring up a little bit, Kerri, that maybe we didn't touch on yet?
I think one of the exercises that we've done in financial literacy courses before has been just that, because people don't realize and kids don't realize the cost. And obviously as they grow older, and I'm talking probably more middle school, maybe high school kids, to really grasp the concept of what life is all about, and we're truly going out on your own. But we do an exercise where they choose what their job is going to be, right? What they would like to do, and what that normal annual salary might pay. And then they choose maybe where they want to live, whether it be a condo, an apartment, a house, and where. And then what kind of car they want to drive. And, you can just imagine, right, that these kids are picking out, right, like that they want to live in a penthouse and they want to drive right, a Maserati or something like that. But it gets down to the point where at the end, whenever they're adding up all of their expenses and things, and they're adding up their income, they see the real world, and they see that, oh geez, like it's not adding up, right? Like I'm short $500, right, a month.
Yeah.
Like I can't do this, right? And so it gives them a reality check as to, okay, so this is important. I really do have to, live within my means. And I think that's even important for adults actually to learn is to live within your means, and, know that, your income versus your expenses is what's important. And the money left over, if you can put away for savings, that's great. And, if you can't, then you need to just kind of, power through it. And at some point, hopefully you'll have that discretionary income where you can put some money away.
Give you a goal, yeah.
Yeah, adulting is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. When you are a kid, I think sometimes you think to yourself, "Oh, my parents have it all figured out. They know exactly what they're doing. They've got all this money, and I don't have anything." And you're not realizing sometimes that they're not buying everything they want either. They're just trying to put a roof over your head and food in your belly and get you to school on time. And it's not always the easiest concept. So
I wonder, I'd like to touch this on briefly. AmeriServ does have
no,
a savings.
no, I'm kidding.
Stop. Kind of. I don't think I'd be doing justice if I don't bring out the savings account. But the savings account that we have is a little bit different than some of the traditional account. We're kind of getting away from where as a kid you would have the passbook and you would take it and they would run it through the machine and they would put your deposit or your withdrawal in there. But we have a Soar statement now, and basically instead of the passbook, just like anything, you have a monthly statement that comes. And if you only have a savings account with AmeriServ, then that's on there. But if you have a checking account, you have investments, whatever, you can combine that all into one statement. But there is like a minimum balance, I think, to open it up. It's like only at $25. And like I said, you can consolidate it. We have, e-statements, so you don't have to get the paper statement in the mail. If you want, you can get it through your computer. It's a variable rate, and it's it's tiered up. I think it goes from 0 to 25,000 is at one rate. Anything over 25,000 is a little bit more. I talked about the minimum deposit. Your savings account can be tied to your ATM if you want a debit card. Not only your checking account, but your savings account all can be tied to a debit card. And AmeriServ has quite a few ATMs at all their branches, so it's very easy to do. You have the ability for direct deposit. You can do automatic payment options out of it. But basically, you have with internet banking, you have 24/7 access to your account information.
Yeah.
So, it's a good account. And like I said, it's kind of set up to handle all ages.
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't live in the same area around an AmeriServ, and if you're listening to this in California or something, I'm sure there are banks and credit unions out there that have similar programs, and some of them even have specialized programs for kids and things like that too. So, you could always look into that, But
Right. And the savings account, actually, if you are not, or you're under the age of 18, there is no service charge. And there's no minimum balance that you need to keep with that as
That's
well.
important. Yeah.
So it's a free account. So it's, we offer that for the children to come in and put their money in there and let it grow.
Yeah.
Good incentive. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I mean, you guys, thank you very much for joining us and for talking about all this stuff with us. Kids, I think, like you said, like sometimes they have a hard time grasping the general concept of patience and understanding that, putting your money away and not spending it immediately gives you the ability to hopefully spend a little bit more on something down the road or something a little bit bigger. Like, if you're spending all your money on penny candy, you're never going to get that bike, right? That Kerri was talking about, so, you got to be able to put some of that money away and save it for, I don't want to say a rainy day, but,
Right.
it sounds very cliche, but
Right.
you know what I mean?
I do. And I think it's never too early, to start talking to your children about money and about savings because, like I said, they develop habits pretty quickly.
Mhm.
And to develop the right habits, especially whenever it comes to money, I think is probably one of the most important things that we can do for our kids. And so hopefully, we've been able to give you a jump start on that today.
Yeah.
And hopefully, through the months of financial literacy and different things, and even in some of the programs that we offer in the schools, they're learning even more. But yeah, I mean, hopefully we.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there are things on our website too. If you go to AmeriServ.com, there is a whole financial library of information on there, and there are coaching sessions that you can do. Like there's little games that you can play with kids, especially younger kids, like lemonade stands and things like that, to sort of teach them the concepts around some of the money and things like that too. Which I guess that's more about maybe making money than saving money, but still, it's important.
It's all
stuff,
important.
So check that out as well. You can find a link in the description. We'll make sure we put the link down there. I say it'll be Jeff, but Jeff will put the link down in the description for you and everything. But thank you very much to both of you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you.
you for having us.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
This podcast focuses on having valuable conversations on various topics related to banking and financial health. The podcast is grounded in having open conversations with professionals and experts, with the goal of helping to take some of the mystery out of financial and related topics, as learning about financial products and services can help you make more informed financial decisions. Please keep in mind that the information contained within this podcast and any resources available for download from our website or other resources relating to bank chats is not intended and should not be understood or interpreted to be financial advice. The host, guests, and production staff of Bank Chats expressly recommend that you seek advice from a trusted financial professional before making financial decisions. The host of Bank Chats is not an attorney, accountant, or financial advisor, and the program is simply intended as one source of information. The podcast is not a substitute for a financial professional who is aware of the facts and circumstances of your individual situation. Teaching children how to save money could be one of the most valuable lessons a parent can give their child. It's not only sound advice from a monetary point of view, but it also teaches patience, discipline, and provides a fantastic feeling of accomplishment when their goals are met. All things that adults could greatly benefit from as well. We want to thank Kerri Mueller and Randy McLaughlin for joining us as our guests on the program today. AmeriServ Presents Bank Chats is produced and distributed by AmeriServ Financial Incorporated. Music by Rattlesnake Milo and Andrew Kalitkin. Our executive producer is Jeffrey Matavish. If you haven't taken the time yet to subscribe to the program, we'd really appreciate it. You can also find all of our episodes on your favorite podcast app, and you can now watch the vodcast on YouTube. For now, I'm Drew Thomas. So long.